Dan, zooming out, what did you make of the postseason overtime change?
So, personally, I like it, right? And I know that every time I've said that out loud here to somebody in the courtyard here at the Breakers, somebody has a counter argument of why it's no good. As a football viewer, as someone who wants to be entertained, it was highly disappointing when Josh Allen didn't get a chance, when his hand was as hot as any quarterback who's had a hot hand at that time of a crucial playoff game, to not touch the ball in overtime. Obviously, the Chiefs benefited from that. A few years earlier, they lost in the AFC Championship game when Patrick Mahomes, the MVP that season, didn't get to touch the ball in overtime. As a football spectator, as an entertainment person, I want to see the best players in the game have a chance to influence the most important games of the season. To be able to give both teams a chance to touch the ball in overtime, I think makes sense. I understand there's people that have different viewpoints on it, and I understand those different viewpoints. I just don't understand how you could be in staunch objection to the proposal that was passed today and will go into effect for the playoffs in 2020.
I would suggest to you that I would think that most teams would elect to kick off now, because if you think about it, if you play defense first, Dan, Sylvia and I were talking about this earlier.
You want to know what you need, right?
Well, there's no chance that you can lose. There's no chance. And the other side of it is, if for whatever reason you create a turnover and you take it back to the house, or you create a short field, you've got a chance to win. You can win on defense in the first possession. The offense cannot. So why wouldn't you kick off?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you will know when you get the ball whether you need to score 3 to keep the game going, whether you need to score 7 to keep the ball going. You know, it's a mental advantage of knowing, do I go for it on 4th down here because I absolutely have to, or do I kick the field? You're right. Like, so there's strategic things that come into play there. You know, the people that were on the counter side of this argument and saying, look, you have to play defense, right? Why can't you just play defense?
I'm one of them.
But my counter argument, and nobody ever gives me a reason when I say this back to get this to a new stage, the Chiefs didn't have to play defense in that playoff game. Their defense was falling apart. It gave up 2 75-yard touchdown drives the last 2 times it was on the field, and they got let off the hook because Josh Allen called the coin flip wrong, right? And so it's like, you have to play defense. Well, the Chiefs didn't have to pass the same test that the Bills had to pass, and so why is that fair?
Well, I mean, why? Because the Chiefs. Well, no, I mean, listen, it's not a pure. The problem I have with it is that I can't. If somebody says to me, well, you know, would you ever elect to kick off with the previous rules? I would say no. Like, I'm an advocate of the existing rules. I don't have any problem with them. I think the change that they made years ago to go from you have to score a touchdown on your first drive to actually win instead of a field goal, I was good with that. But, you know, I think that defenses, both of those teams should have better defenses. The Bills couldn't stop a fart. It's the reason why the game went to overtime.
But neither could the Chiefs, and they weren't punished. The Bills were punished because they had to go play defense on the possession in overtime.
But
the Chiefs didn't.
I think, Dan, punished is too strong a word from my perspective, because this isn't a game of high schools. Like, you're a professional football team, and the Bills have a defensive-minded head coach, and you're going to tell me that you can't dial up anything? You can't dial up anything?
But you're still kind of skirting around what I'm saying. The Chiefs didn't have to do that. They weren't forced to take the same test defensively.
Well, how do you get rid of that with the new rule when, as I said to you, the team that kicks off cannot lose, but the team that accepts the ball can lose? Like, I don't think that you've solved the problem. If you were looking for equity, you've given the team that kicks off now a strategic advantage over the team that is receiving it for the reason we just discussed.
I just think it's a far greater solution to have both teams be able to touch the football in overtime, particularly in a league right now that is driven by quarterbacks, right? And the team with the best quarterback is typically winning many of these games, right?
But we saw with the Chiefs and the Bengals game that if you do play defense, you do have a chance to win in overtime if you don't win the coin flip.
That is true, but 10 of the 12 games that have
small
gone
sample size, Dan.
In the playoffs.
That's a really small sample size.
It's a big percentage, though. 10 out of 12 with 7
I mean,
of those
1 out of
decided on the first possession.
Yeah, I get it. 2 out of 3 is also a good percentage, but it's still a small sample size.
See, this is why I'm a little bit surprised that this passed today, because these same types of spirited conversations were occurring within the rooms, and what was happening is you'd have a representative from one team pitch 3 suggestions, somebody from else, and there was some fear that they weren't going to be able to find a solution that would get those 24 votes. Instead, they got 29 out of 32 today, and we're going to see how this works in the playoffs. in 2022. Of course, next year there probably won't be a single overtime playoff game.
It's good.
Well
Dan,
said.
Great stuff.
Thanks,
good spirited debate.
All right, guys. We'll talk soon.
There you go.